Wassel. I'm Dan Ralph Miller. I'm a heathen of just over 20 years now, and this video is a posted response to why I believe what I believe, from a poster who's responded to one of the videos I posted to YouTube on behalf of the Heathen Freehold Society of British Columbia. Now, because I am the public spokesperson of the Freehold Society, I should throw in this disclaimer. I'm now posting as a private individual, and all of the opinions about to be expressed herein are solely my own and do not necessarily reflect those of the Heathen Freehold Society of British Columbia. Now, that should not perhaps have to be said, but sometimes people confuse between my personal point of view and the policies, customs, views, logs of the Heathen Freehold Society, which are actually independent of my kindred. So at any rate, why do I believe what I believe? Well, that's a very long story. We'll try and squeeze it into YouTube's 10-minute limit if we can. I'm the first generation of my family in over 1,000 years to be raised wholly outside of Christianity, naturally exposed to its influences just to the same degree as anyone else in this culture all around me, images filling the media and so forth. But I did not attend church as an individual other than voluntarily, as a kid other than voluntarily, and was not raised at all with any of the ideological indoctrination which is usually standard for folks of my ilk here in North America. So, in my father and mother's generation, they were allowed a certain amount of religious freedom, but still given a church-going type of grounding every Sunday, going to church kind of thing. Although later in the late 50s, it became more voluntary for most of my parents' generation in my family. Prior to that, though, we're talking hardcore American settlers, Baptist type, and Protestants, from mostly poor folk, farmer types from Europe. A little bit of noble blood in there too came over. Some of them married First Nations or Native American wives on both sides of the family, some generations back. But about 80 to 90% of my genetic code is European. Anyways, point being, I'm the first in over 1,000 years in my tribe to be free of Christianity, utterly and completely, other than what I absorbed around me. So my interest in spiritualism and religion started from a very young age, although I was raised more or less as an atheist. My father, a psychologist, somewhat of an agnostic, scientific approach to his approach. So I guess more than agnostic, I was agnostic more than atheist, which is to mean, do the divine powers exist? Who knows? But at any rate, I was extremely curious as a kid and as a young child. Learned about visualizations. It was the early 70s, and I learned about meditating and all these type of things that were popular then. And in my teens, as I started to learn about the history of my people, I became heartbroken and ashamed at our history, because as Europeans, WASPs, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant types, we were party to whole-scale genocide across the entire planet. My ancestors were the ones that converted to Christianity 1,000 years ago, and for most of that part were subject to the religious fanatic tides of their times, and were party to the exploitation of the third world, basically, and the colonization. And the image I got of my European ancestors were that of a cross-wielding, sword-swinging barbarian, someone coming, religious fanatics cramming some crazy ideological religion down everybody's throats all around the planet. One tribe after another: North America, South America, Africa, Malaysia, South Pacific, I mean, it's just history is a story of heartbreak, of countless Aboriginal indigenous cultures being destroyed at the hands of ideological religious fanatics and power-hungry madmen, who are most of the key figures in history. And as a young man of 13, 14, these facts really broke my heart, So I was quite honestly somewhat ashamed at that point to be white European male, part of the privileged global class, And perhaps some folkish will balk at that, but so be it. I mean, look at the facts. I didn't, and I didn't know we had any culture of our own, any civilization. Just like everybody else in the 60s and 70s, I was taught the Nordic tribes were practical cavemen before Christianity. So, what did I know? So consequently, I went on a search throughout my teens of all different religions all around the world. Was very interested in Native American shamanism, the Eastern philosophies, Taoism, the I Ching, Hinduism stuff. I looked at, all around the world at all different approaches to religiosity, and I was quite interested as well in the Aboriginal Australian stuff, and the more I looked at it, the more attracted I became to primitive cultures in general, and somewhat. I remember in my late teens, having magical full moon gatherings on the beach and whatnot, not really knowing what I was doing with my friends. We were mostly just partying and having fun, but here we see the beginnings, the stirrings of a pagan or heathen sentiment. As a young man in my early 20s, a new girlfriend said, "Hey, I'm part of a witches' coven." Ooh, and here images of satanic rituals in the night, all came flooding into my head. And even though I was not raised a Christian, all these images came flooding into my head of satanic rites and whatnot. So, but I'm still a curious type. I thought, well, let's check this out.